I'm actually going to start with this now. I need everyone to actually, let me to uh, tell me if you can actually see the slide that I just shared now. Thank you so much. Okay, today we actually going to focus on what I call autoregressive model or for that one. Okay, this is one of time series modules that we have. Okay, so that is basically going to be the focus today. You are welcome on board to time series analysis part 2. Of course, we did introduction yesterday. And of course, like I said, the focus is basically going to be AR1. The AR1 means autoregressive model of order 1. Okay, so in the outline in this material, uh, I think I'm going to walk you through some example of time series data. Then, what is a time series graph? Okay, a time series graph is also what we call time plot. Okay, I'm also and what is a walk of time series graph? Okay, I'm actually we use time series graph, to investigate whether there's a mean reverting or maybe the particular time series has explosive behavior. Okay, we also use that to investigate trend, seasonality, or whether there's a structural break. Okay, then I'm also going to walk you through important concept in time series analysis that we call the autocorrelation and stationarity. I also walk you through that yesterday. And of course, I'm also going to mention the simplest form of time series model that we call white noise model. And lastly, we're going to focus on AR of order 1, which we call the autoregressive model of order 1. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with example of time series. Okay, I want to say that time series actually cut across, different fields. Okay, you want to talk about in economics, in social sciences, in epidemiology, medicine, physical sciences. I'm also going to say even in politics. Okay, so we have the examples of time series that are, cut across all these areas. Of course, if you take a look at one of the example in the economies, you could talk about the gross domestic product, that we call the GDP, the consumer price index, the S&P 500 index, unemployment rate. These are actually collected over time that make them to be time series. Of course, if you want to have access to some data set here, so you can actually click on that. That is the US GDP from the Federal Reserve. Okay, you can look at the economy data, okay, because they are collected over time. Okay, so that's actually qualified to be time series data. In social sciences, you want to talk about the registered birth rate, population, migration data, political indicators, and so on like that. When you're trying to click here, you're going to see population without citizenship, citizenship from, Eurostar, stuff like that. You know, um, if you look in this administration now, you can actually look at the numbers of immigrants to the United States over time. You may want to see whether is it going to be increasing or decreasing or stuff like that. So because data set are collected over time, of course, they qualify to be time series data. Now, what about in epidemiology? If you want to look at what happened, we are in the middle of pandemic, okay, where you actually want to look at the spread of the COVID-19 over time, that qualifies to be time series data, you know what I mean? Or you want to look at infection rate over time, or you want to look at vaccination rate over time, okay? You look at the vaccination rate over time, you basically want to see whether as time goes on, whether, more people will get vaccinated or not, you get what I mean? So So you can look at disease rate, the mortality rate, the mosquito population, and so on like that. So if you come here, you're basically going to see U.S. cancer incidence rate. Okay, from the Center for Disease Control, that those are time series that are because they are actually collected over time. You want to talk about the medicine where you want to actually talk about the blood pressure tracking. What about the weight tracking? What about the cholesterol measurement? What about the heart rate monitoring? Okay, so all these are data set collected over time. I got a lot of, there's some data here, the MRI scanning and behavioral tests data set. You can actually have access to that when you click on that. So what about the physical sciences? You want to talk about the global temperatures over time. You want to talk about the monthly sunspot observations. You want to talk about the pollution levels over time. I know the climate scientists actually argue now that climate is changing. I know for them to be able to arrive at that, they've looked at the data set and, they realize that probably over time, okay, the temperatures actually change rapidly. You get what I mean? So what about the pollution level and so on like that? If you want to have access to global air pollution from the our world in data, you are actually going to have access to that. So not only here, even in sports, we have time series data set. Example of time series data can also be found in sports. Of course, recently the NBA final was actually played, I think, was it between Celtic and Golden State Warrior. Okay, and you may actually want to say the numbers of time the Golden State Warrior has won the NBA finals, or you may want to talk about a particular soccer team probably from match to match, you basically, from time to time, you basically want to see how strong they are in terms of scoring goals. You get what I mean? So, you know, I just want to tell you, data set collected over time is what we call time series data. And you know what the example of that we're going to continue to go on and on and on and on. Okay, you get what I mean? Okay, so just to give you example of time series data. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is what we call time series graph. Just like what we in linear regression that I've walked you through before, there's something that we call a scatter plot, right? The scatter plot is when you have a kind of a diagrammatical plotting of response variable against independent variable, and of course with that you'll be able to see the shape, the kind of relationship between the two variables. But let me tell you, in time series analysis, we have a time series graph. Okay, the only different here is this is more or less very close to scatter plot, except that we actually plot the series over time. Okay, the time is basically going to act as an independent variable, and the series itself is basically going to be, the outcome variable. So the time series graph is also what we call a time plot. I'm going to say that again. We also call that time plots, okay, which is more or less, the diagrammatical plotting of the series against time. Of course, with the time series graph, you'll be able to visualize the time series data. You'll be able to see the pattern, and that will enable you to detect some things, which I'm going to talk about now. Number one thing, the time series plot will enable you to detect is to see whether there's going to be a mean reverting or as an explosive behavior. What do I actually mean by mean reverting? Okay, by mean reverting is more or less like, something that is actually probably going up or going down, and later now revert back to the average. Okay, that's what we call the mean reversion. Okay, by mean reversion, specifically, if I want to talk about financial study, I'm actually gonna say it is used in finance. Okay, and that suggests that the asset price, okay, volatility and the historical returns eventually revert to the long run mean on average level of the entire data set. Maybe what there's something actually fluctuates, maybe like a gas price now, okay, maybe it's going up, and is now get to a point that it now reverts and actually come back to the mean, the mean gas price of the data set. That's exactly what we mean. Okay, so the mean reversion is a financial theory, okay, which suggests that after an extreme price move, because let me tell you, following the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and European countries and United States, they've banned Russian oil, and that actually affects the price of gas throughout the world. And as you can see, there's going to be an extreme price move. Okay, but we're actually going to say it's revert, it's me reverting if that very move, that price actually tend to return back to normal. Okay, return back to where it was. That is what I mean, or average levels. Okay, that's what I mean by mean reversion. Now, when we talk about having explosive behavior, the space, I could remember yesterday I was actually talking about a white noise model. The white noise model is unpredictable. Explosive behavior is not something that we like at all. Okay, it's not something that we like at all. So because that is more or less like an erratic, I'm gonna call that, an erratic behavior. Okay, it's not something that we actually want. When something is more volatile, when you have a sudden episode of impulsive, aggressive, or violent behavior. Okay, that's exactly what I mean. Okay, so that is against me reverting. You get what I mean? So, okay, so you know the time series could, the time series plots that we call the time series graph, and also exhibit seasonality. It can show us there's a trend. It can show there's a seasonality in the data set. Okay, showing us as a trend actually means is going to tell us whether there's an upward movement or downward movement. You know what I mean? Maybe it's going to be going up or it's going to be going down. That's what we call the trend. And for seasonality, maybe the same thing happened in the same month. Maybe or January, that is what happened, or February's of the years under investigation, that is what happened in that situation that is exhibiting seasonality. That's exactly what I mean. Okay, so the time series graph will enable us, to dictate stuff like that. I'm actually gonna walk you through how we can actually use the time series graph to dictate that. Okay. So then there's something that we actually, when we take a look at this, there could be what I call, a structural break. Okay. Some of you maybe wondering, okay, so what do I mean by a structural break? Oh, the structural break, actually means you have an unexpected change over time in the parameters of the regression models. I think I've walked you through linear regression, of course, the regression parameters, the beta naught, the beta one, and so on like that. Situation where you have a positive before and it now suddenly change. to something else. Okay, so we call that a structural break. Okay, unexpected change. The change that you don't expect at all. Okay, over time in the parameters of the regression models. And that can actually, situation where there's a structural break, we don't want that, okay? Because that's a sudden change. Something that is actually going in one direction before and suddenly now change. Okay, there could be a lot of reason why that happened. It could be government policy, it could be, natural disasters and so on, just like what happened in the world, during the COVID-19 lockdown, that really affect the economy of the world, it really affect the world economy. Okay, so by structural, break is an unexpected change over time in the parameters of regression models. And you know what? When the moment we have a structural breaks like that, which I call the unexpected change over time in the parameter of regression model, that will lead to forecasting a very huge forecasting error. I'm going to say that again, okay? Because you cannot trust your model anymore. Okay, your model, the model you're actually using cannot be trusted. Okay, because of the fact that, so since you cannot trust that, that will lead to huge forecasting error. And you know what we want to do in time series analysis? We basically want to look at the variation in certain time series and explain the variation in another time series. We're using the trend in the process, in the data set to actually make a forecast a situation where there's a structural break, where there's an unexpected change. Of course, you cannot really trust your model. Okay, I just wanted to take note of that. Okay, so now and let me tell you this. Uh, this in turn can help guide testing, diagnostics, and estimation method used during time series modeling and analysis. I'm going to say that in time series analysis, just like what we have in the linear regression model, we have a way to evaluate whether the model is actually doing a great job. Okay, so even in time series analysis, of course, the time plot, the time series graph, we actually play a long way in assessing our time series model. Okay, so don't forget, just like in linear regression model, we make use of a scatter plot, we make use of a residual plot, we make use of a normal KK plot. So all those plots, they are diagnostic plots. I'm actually calling them diagnostic plots. Okay, so the time series plot, the time series graph, also going to do a job, okay, of making sure that, okay, we have got a good model or not, the model we can trust. And don't forget, in time series analysis, we basically want to make a forecast, we want to make a scientific prediction based on our the behavior of the data set under investigation. Okay, there's something I want you to see now. The example of mean reverting. You can see what happened here. Okay, this is an example of mean reverting. Initially, the behavior was actually kind of, upward movement, but it later reverts back, okay, to the mean. Okay, so, and that is exactly what we are expecting now, like the gas price that is going up. I think based on what I actually monitored on the social media in the United States, I think the price of the gas price actually gained 20 cents. It goes down by 20 cents if you compare that over the last week. And of course, based on what we're hearing, that is one of the efforts by the president of the United States. I've got to believe is traveling to the Middle East to make sure probably maybe it could actually address the gas price that is going up in the United States. Okay, so what I'm designing example of to show the mean reverting, and this is I'm actually using the auto regressive module of order two, which I'm see gonna walk you through. Okay, okay, now this is actually this time series graph actually telling a story. Like I said, the time series graph, they're actually telling story like this one now is with trend, as you can see, upward movement, right? So this is with a time trend. As time goes on, you can see what happened, right? Okay, so this is the one with seasonality. You know, there's something I wanted to say. The first one here, this is the mean reverting. Okay, this is a mean reverting, you know, we plot the price against time, and you see something like this. This is more or less mean reverting, you get what I mean? And this is with the trend. Look at that. Okay, can see that? That's it with the trend. That's a positive one. Take a look at that. Okay, how am I going to know? Of course, you know, you can only know that when you plot that over time. You get what I mean? And if you take a look at this is its seasonality. I just wanted to take a look at this. You can see that, you know, when it starts going up, it gets a point, comes down, and it pick up again. Take a look at this. Okay, this is a time series seasonality. So here we plotted the US retail sales in billions of dollars, okay, against years under investigation. And as you can see now, okay, so this is actually exhibiting seasonality. So this is how to study word. Okay, you know, this that I said now is actually exhibiting seasonality. Okay, so take a look at that. Okay, I talked about structural break the other time. You get what I mean, right? You know, the structural break, you know, the structural break is when there is an unexpected change over time. You remember? You know, if you take a look at the pattern here from 1960 to probably 1980, but from 1980, look at what happened. Take a look at that. Now, and from here, it's stay here. Look at that. It stay here. Okay, so that's a break. That's a break we're talking about. Okay, you know, it's in this, you know, well, it was going this way before, and you know, it break and it start again. And take a look at that now. So look at this one. Look at this is an example of a structural break. Okay, so these are and you know what, when you have a structural break, you cannot trust your model. You cannot use that model to make a forecast because it's actually going to have a very huge forecast error. I'm going to say that again. If your model, if your time series actually exhibit what I'm showing you now, which is a structural break, which we call the unexpected, unexpected change over time, in the parameter of regression models. Okay, of course, if you cannot trust the model because this is an unexpected change. If you make a forecast with that, of course you're basically going to have very huge forecasting error, and of course it means you cannot rely on whatever forecast that you actually make using the model because it cannot be trusted. I just wanted to take note of that. Okay, so this is the end of the supplementary material. You know what I just show you here in this material is just to show you what we use time series graph. Okay, what the time series graph can actually detect. Okay, the mean reverting, the trend, the seasonality, and the structural break. Take a look at that. Okay, so is there anyone who want to ask question before I go into a new material? Is there anyone? Or we need clarification before I go into new material? Is there anyone? Okay, I think on this material, I walk you through example of time series data, and from there, I actually discuss time series graph, and of course, the time series graph can enable us to detect, whether there's a mean reverting or has an explosive behavior, or whether it has a trend or it has a seasonality, or let's say a structural break. And of course, I think I show you the picture of mean reverting I also show you the picture of the one that have a trend, and I show you the one that that actually when the series exhibits seasonality. And of course, here this is a plot of U.S. retail sales in billions of dollars over the years. Take a look at that exhibits seasonality. Okay, and I also walk you through the one where there can be unexpected change over time, as you can see from 1960 up to 1979. You saw what happened, and another pattern pick up, okay, from 1980. And I know the economists, I know they can tell, they know they can actually explain what lead to this. Okay, if you really need more information about that, I know the economist, okay, actually knows why this has happened. But statistically speaking, I'm actually going to say when you have stuff like this that exhibit, where time series that are actually exhibit a structural break like this, you cannot use this to make a prediction. You cannot, because there's going to be huge forecasting error. Okay, there's going to be huge forecasting error. Okay, so I'm going to share my second lecture material for today. Give me 1 second.